Hi guys, today we are talking about asexual reproduction and organisms that use mitosis as their mean of reproduction. So, asexual reproduction is the process by which offspring are produced from a single parent, and it does not involve the joining of gametes. Organisms who go through asexual reproduction are genetically identical to the parent offspring. Those organisms that use mitosis as their form of replication actually are going through something called binary fission. It's asexual reproduction, mitosis, but because it's reproduction, we have a special name for it. So it's an asexual reproduction in which a cell divides into two roughly equal parts. Asexual reproduction is performed by many organisms through cell division. They are using asexual reproduction as their method of division instead of using sexual reproduction to create genetic diversity. Binary fission functions very similarly to mitosis. It's a reproduction process that makes new organisms from one or more parent. Reproduction can happen either sexually or asexually. Sexual reproduction involves the joining of two specialized cells called gametes. Asexual reproduction does not use gametes. Binary fission and mitosis are very similar. They both involve the duplication of a chromosome or chromosomes to divide into two genetically identical cells. But because it's reproduction, we call it binary fission. So prokaryotes reproduce through binary fission. Formed by a single-celled organism, or it can all. Prokaryotes perform binary fission. They are single-celled organisms that divide into two roughly equal parts. Sorry, that was a little hard to get out right now. It is very similar to mitosis because the two processes make two daughter cells that are genetically identical to the parent. Again, just because this is reproduction, it is given its special name. This is binary fission happening in a bacterium cell. So we have our ribosomes, a plastid, our chromosomes, and our cell wall. And what happens is that chromosomes duplicate, they separate until we have two identical cells. It starts when the bacterial chromosome gets copied. Chromosomes attach to the cell membrane, the cell grows, chromosomes move away from one another. Cytokinesis then occurs when the cell is double its original size. The cell wall will form between the two new sets of chromosomes. If this is an organism that has a cell wall, which completes the process of separation. If this organism did not have a cell wall and they just had that cell membrane, it would form that cleavage furrow and then split off into two daughter cells. There are many advantages to asexual reproduction. It's favorable in environments that do not change very often, like the internal lining of your stomach. There are over 2 million types of bacteria inside the internal lining of your stomach, and you do not want them to change. The results are that they are genetically identical, which means that they will continue to do the job that they were designed for. The disadvantages, though, are in changing conditions, genetically identical offspring do respond to the environment in the same exact way. That means that if the population is no longer favorable to the environment, or the environment is not favorable to the population, that population is going to die out. We do have some eukaryotes and multicellular organisms that have the ability to reproduce through asexually and through mitosis. If you have ever taken a cutting of a plant from one place and then got it to grow roots and then replanted in the soil, you've helped that plant reproduce asexually. It's that growing of plants from a stem cutting. They reproduce through mitosis and they are genetically identical to the original organism. This is done by the organisms in nature in a few different ways. First is budding. This is most commonly seen in corals, like coral reef, which is in fact a living organism, not just rock. What happens is a small projection called a bud grows off the edge of the plant. That bud forms a new individual that is genetically identical to the parent. It can either grow as part of the colony or it can break off and live independently on its own. Either way, it is genetically identical to the parent offspring. Fragmentation is another common one, especially with perennial plants. Anyone who has like bulbs for lilies or lilac trees, anything like that, knows that these things grow like absolute wildfire. And what happens is it's when the parent organism splits into pieces, each that then can grow into its own organism. So we see here this stem, which is now called a peg, is growing downwards into the ground. And instead of it breaking, what it does is it stays connected and grows a new organism. This is how these perennial plants are able to spread like wildfire. This is also called a vegetative reproduction. It involves the modification of a stem or the underground features of the organism, the parent. Offspring then stay connected most commonly to the original organism, creating an even wider plant than normal. Many organisms, however, use both asexual and sexual reproduction. Humans are not one of those. We are not really able to do asexual reproduction just by ourselves. The type of organism or the type of reproduction used by these organisms that can use both asexual and sexual reproduction depends on the organism, the conditions, and the types of cells that are involved.